Welcome to The Voice of Business, sponsored by the Greater Beverly Chamber of Commerce, with services to Beverly, Danvers, Hamilton, and Wenham. This is John King, your host for today for the Headway Strategies Consulting, based here in the North Shore, bringing you today's show. The purpose of The Voice of Business is to bring you information about different business issues, chamber-sponsored programs, and related events in our area. Today we're going to discuss a very relevant topic for many small business owners who are looking to retire either through selling their business to one or more family members, an outside third party, or with current employees. They may look at merging with a competitor or actually having to liquidate their business. Today in the studio I'm joined by Steve Vesey and Eric Bratt from Business Legacy Strategies to discuss this issue and offer some guidance for business owners who are facing this situation. Welcome, Steve and Eric. It's good to see you here today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
How about giving us, the audience, a brief background of your experience and how you got involved in this business?
Sure. I've just wrapped up a 38-year career as a CPA, have transitioned my practice to my partner. And through that whole process, there was, I have lived through the transition process. I've lived through the exit process. And it was a very definitive, once a month we met with somebody. We discussed the pros and the cons of what we were doing, the difficulties of what how we were feeling about it. And I like I say, I actually lived it, and we brought in a sort of a heart and soul consultant that deals with the emotional issues of leaving a business. Because so many business owners, they live their business. It's them. It's who they are. They identify with it. So all of a sudden, you're going to replace those 2,600 hours a year you're working with something. You have to really think about that. So that was really the passion I've developed for this, and that's why I really, really enjoy it. We've been doing this for about 6 years. We had another consulting outfit that we sort of split off, and I'm taking the smaller pieces of it, and my former partner's taking the larger pieces of it. And along the way, Eric and I hitched up, and he's been doing this for about 3 years with us. So I'm really excited because we have a focus on the smaller businesses, and we really bring a lot to the table, I believe.
Great, great. Eric, you don't look like you're ready to go through the exit strategy process yet, but what's your background?
I'm only 51, but I've been through it already, actually, not so successfully. So my background is I was a Navy pilot for years. I exited. I came back to Massachusetts to join the family business, which was a machine shop. We ran it pretty successfully for 10 years, during that time frame, I was trying to get the transition going with my parents and my family, and it never really got to go well. My dad ended up passing away, and I was left to deal with picking up all the pieces. A couple years later, we did a structured liquidation, and then I went on to other things. And that's sort of how I developed a passion for the planning process, because I couldn't get it going as hard as I tried, as a 33-year-old youngster with a family business and a lot to lose. So I was reading the Wall Street Journal one day, and I saw this op-ed with Steve's former partner talking about business succession planning. And I had known Steve since 1995 or 6 at the Danvers Rotary Club, and I called him and I said, so how's this business going? Can I help you out? I'd like to work with you in the business development area. So we joined. I guess we hooked our horses to the same cart, and here we are.
Very good, very good. Well, you've certainly got the experience to relate to it. You from having gone through it, and you from having gone through it as well in a different vein. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the context of what we think this situation is. I've heard words like exit planning, transition planning, or succession planning. What do they mean in terms of life, of what you're trying to do with your business?
Well, first of all, it's nice to know that you were listening. But we started down this road with exit planning, and what happened was we found that almost too abrasive for people. It's such a sudden thing. So then we moved it on to a transition plan, and or succession plan. Transition, succession are pretty much the same word or same meaning. And we found people, through this, Eric and I have been trained with Pinnacle Equity Solutions. It's an outfit down in the South Shore. and they run a series of classes and certifications to work you through the process. And they have interviewed business owners, up to 1,000 business owners now they've worked with, and 80% of these business owners want legacy. They want, hopefully, the business to turn over to their children or their management team. So that really isn't an exit. That's more of a succession.
Right,
how are you going to
transition, right.
succession out of your business? So that's pretty much the whole the difference there. It's a subset of the exit plan, I would say.
So how big is this market?
It's huge. If you think of all the baby boomers that have businesses, I always think about the Vietnam vets who came back, went to technical school, set up the HVAC company, items like that which have real value, but because they're not large enough, nobody pays attention to them.
Right.
If you and I were brothers and we had a $4 million HVAC business, no mergers and acquisition company is going to talk to
Right.
us, but there's $2 to $3 million of value sitting on the table that's important to our retirement. Mm-hmm. So that's where it is, because these people, they were looking for a liquidity event. Business owners, I don't care who you are, 75 to 80% of your net worth is locked up in the value of your business. How are you going to get at it? And most people need it.
Okay. What you talked about it, there's a 10-year transfer cycle that you've sent me some notes
Sure,
on,
yep.
and I'm going to just explain that a little bit to the
Sure.
audience here.
Well, what it is a gentleman named Rob Slee. He wrote Private Capital Markets, and he's sort of the guru of this whole exit planning transfer process. And he's gone back over the last 4 decades and stacked them on top of each other. And what he has found is that those middle 6 years are the key years, the ultimate transfer time. Normally the first couple of years in a decade, you're coming out of a downturn. The middle years is the prime time. Those middle 6 years is the prime time to sell. And then we start ratcheting down towards the end. So right now in 2017, we are prime time into the transfer cycle for people to sell. And, one of the problems we've run into is business is so good, they don't want to get out.
Right.
3-4 years ago, it made sense. And now when things were so sour, 2008, 9, and 10, a lot of small business owners made the cuts. They made the tough moves they had to make. Well, now they're learning to do more with less, and the same revenue number is giving them a much
Better profit than what they had.
much more robust bottom line.
So the age group that you're dealing with are baby boomers, so you're looking at people that were born before 1960, somewhere thereabouts.
Right. Most of the people we deal with were born in the 50s.
Yeah. Okay. And so, but what I also saw from the notes you gave me that 20% of the businesses are actually sold, and the other 80%, something else happens to them.
Something else happens to them.
What's the something else that happens to them?
If the business isn't sold, there are other things that can happen. Just quickly talking about the internal transfers. Sometimes business owners are lucky enough to have a couple of kids in the business that are really sharp and can handle it. Many times business owners have a couple of kids in the business that aren't sharp and can't handle it. That's another whole problem. Some business owners have a crack management team that they've been trained and they're ready to step in. The problem you run into is, show me a 40-year-old, they don't have any money and they're adverse to taking risks.
Right.
So that's a bit of a problem. But there are other things to happen. There is mergers that can happen out there. Sometimes a competitor will want to gobble, the big fish eats the little fish, so to speak. And if all else fails, sometimes, before you get to that point, you can give it away. If you're wealthy enough and you don't need the proceeds of this, you can gift it to your heirs, you can gift it to your managers, you just have to file a gift tax return. But sometimes what happens is there's a liquidation, just as Eric's business went through. The assets are sold off and the business is over. Businesses do have a shelf life.
Right.
There's a beginning and an ending.
Right. Okay. I know that when my friend's family had a sporting goods store, and the father decided he was going to retire, and he thought he would just be able to collect what he was collecting before when he retired, and his son said, "Well, Dad, we can't afford that."
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, he found himself in a little bit of a predicament that maybe he hadn't anticipated. Yeah. And so that understanding, I think, would be a big part about how the succession, how the retirement of the chief executive is going to come across.
It's very common.
Yep.
That's where it's going to come across. Okay. So why is it so? We talked about why it's so difficult to sell a business. Let's talk about the business value. How do you value a business?
Well, the value of the business is really, it's a function of the cash flow. And there are rules of thumbs in different industries and those type of things. But what we do is we go in, and the term EBITDA, earnings before interest,
Right.
taxes, depreciation, amortization, is sort of a driving force here. And in many businesses, you have to go in and normalize that EBITDA because the business owner has run everything under the sun through the business. And by that I mean, we're accountants, we're on the compliance side of things, so we try to watch them, but we know things are getting on the expense side that really aren't business related, they're personal. So you have to sort of quantify that and get it down to a number.
Okay.
And then what happens is we build a capitalization rate, which takes you to a multiple, and you're always hearing multiples of EBITDA, multiples of EBITDA, multiples of my cash flow, multiples of my free cash. And we get to that number by, we subscribe to a lot of different services that provide us with risk factors that various types of businesses in various sizes in various parts of the country put together. And you start off with the least risky investment, which is a 20-year T-bill rate, and
Okay.
work up from there. Most capitalization rates fall between 20 and 25%, which means you get a 5 to 4 or 4 times multiple of the EBITDA. And that's where the starting point is. The joke in the industry is if you want to know what the business is really worth, you ask the owner, he tells you, and then you cut that number in half.
Well, you're being generous, I think.
Yeah, I
in some
think so
cases.
too, yep.
Yeah, I'm doing that. Okay. But how do you reach, do you go back to that owner's CPA firm, or do you do that separately?
Oh, we work very closely with the owners, the current owners' advisory team.
Okay.
And that's the message that's really important. We're not trying to take a job away from anybody. We're trying to work with the existing staff that they have. They're lawyers, they're bankers, they're advisors, they're CPAs. The CPA is a key person here because we rely on the validity of the numbers they're providing us
Right.
to come up with our number.
Right.
And many times we work very closely with them. They give us the numbers, and we have questions. They about us business owners, ask my CPA. So.
Okay, well, that's a good way to start.
Yes, it is.
A good way to start. How can an owner increase the value of his business?
Well, there's many ways, but before we get to that, I just want to take a step back for
Sure.
a minute there. One of the things that you talk about, why is this so hard and why is it difficult, is business owners find it difficult to focus on what they're doing because they're putting out today's fire. And one of the things Eric and I came up with through our context of Pinnacle is a business exit readiness index. And I'd like to have Eric speak a few words about that, if please.
Certainly. So through Pinnacle Equity Solutions, we have a quick 20-question quiz, and it's nothing more than I agree, disagree, or maybe.
Okay.
And it's sort of, it breaks down how you feel or whether you're ready to exit or whether you've given it consideration. And it's a two shall we say, axes. Are you financially ready or are you mentally ready? And both of those axes have a big determination on how much time you're going to need to transition. We'll start with the mental readiness first, and I'll just point out a few things that whether this is mental head and heart issues. What will the owner do with his or her time after devoting 24/7 to running their business if they leave? Say somebody buys them out in 2 weeks. They're going to play golf? Are they going to spend time with their kids? Do they have other charitable things they can do? How are they going to fill that void? And a lot of times that's never even thought about. Other things is, if you're just love running your business and that's all you want to do, it doesn't matter. You probably want to stay until they take you out on, well, we won't talk about that, but
Well, you have an opportunity to walk out. Somebody helps you walk
somebody
out.
walk out.
Somebody helps you walk
Eventually.
out.
One way or another.
But, you'll get out the door at some point. Oftentimes, Steve can relate to this, that your business is your persona. Steve Vesey's name's on the front door of his accounting firm. It's been there for 35 years. When he leaves, who's going to recognize Steve as a very successful accountant on the North Shore any longer? So that's an issue that folks need to think about.
We were actually working with a business owner in Danvers, very, very prominent guy, great guy, and we had this talk with him because we got to the point, now let's talk about what's going to happen. And he says to me, I don't want to do this. He says, I'll deal with it down the road, but I love walking through the factory every day. I love doing this. If I didn't own the business, who'd talk to me? And he was dead serious.
Well, and it certainly is. It's something that he's been doing for a while, and it's part of his life, right?
Yeah, it's been his life. It's been his whole life.
So those are some of the mental readiness issues. The other part is also, how do I deal with my family members, my kids? Some kids are ready to take charge. Some kids are not. Some are involved. Some aren't. So you have to, maybe play favorites or not play favorites, and that is an impediment to moving forward many times.
Well, it is, certainly. Some things I do in my business coaching practices, I do assessments to try to get a sense of what people's values are, how they make decisions, and what their behavior is. And that goes a long way to trying to pick the successor that's going to work in the new business.
And sometimes it's not a family member.
That's right.
And that's a decision that has to be made objectively, and hopefully you've chosen the right one.
Right.
The other aspect is the financial readiness, and we find that through this survey and all the data that's been collected, that about 80% of the folks that have taken the survey, maybe they're in their 60s, early, whatever their age time frame is, they're in the stay and grow phase. They don't have enough financial readiness to just leave, and they're not ready to do it mentally. So some of the financial things, we ask during the thing, do we treat our business as a lifestyle, or do we treat it as a true business entity? So, and I see the smile on your face. You know that probably, I'm going to throw a percentage out, but 70% or so of business owners oftentimes treat their business as a lifestyle. So they, when times are good, they pay themselves more. They maybe buy a condo in Florida, etc. When times are tough, they hunker down. They try to hold on to their employees and make it through the dip in the business cycle, and then they come back out. They may live a little larger, and when it comes time to their retirement, they put it off so long that it's a tough thing to face.
Right.
We asked folks, have they? One of the questions on the survey is, have you even met with a financial planner with regard to your retirement savings? A lot of times the question is no, because things go back into the business. It's trying to keep the business going.
Well, they don't have that access to capital sometimes too, I think. So a lot of it comes from the business.
Right. Or a bank. Or a banking relationship.
Right.
The other thing we ask, and many of them don't even know what the value of their businesses are today. So it's one of the ways we can help is doing a business valuation. At least they have an idea, other than saying, what do you think it's worth? Let's divide it by 2, and that's where we're going to start off.
Well, it's back of the envelope stuff, but sometimes that's a good place to start.
Yeah, well, it's better than if you don't even have an envelope and you don't have a pen. So that's one of the things we work with people. So the other thing is, have you as a business owner saved enough for the lifestyle that you're accustomed to, and even have you possibly considered the tax consequences if you have to, say, sell your business today due to, say, a personal issue, divorce, a health issue in the family. Those are all things that if you take the time 5 years prior to when you think you may exit your business, you need that time to plan on.
Right. So is it a 5-year plan, do you think?
In some cases it is, but we're finding, especially with the smaller businesses, I'm not saying they woke up one morning and I'm done, but many times the conversation is, geez, my brother just got diagnosed with cancer.
Right.
I lost my best friend. My wife is sick. I'm done. Get me out of here and help me do it in a profitable way, and so I can continue on my life. But it's hard. You never want to put yourself in a position where your cardiologist or your oncologist becomes your exit planner.
Well, that's true, but it just the time to go through the mental awareness of what you've got. I mean, my wife retired from teaching after 35 years or something like that, and she had worked all that time doing special needs, and all of a sudden, boom, she's done. And that lasted about, 6 months or a year, and she went back in the classroom.
Okay, so you did not become her special need.
Well, yes, so I didn't become a special need. Well, I think maybe I am a special need in some cases, but that's a different story. But I think that the point being is that in her case, I mean, she was a teacher. She didn't have a business, but that was how she identified herself.
That's her life, yep.
And that was her life. And so now she went back into the classroom in a different role, but she's back. And I think that's important because
Sure.
you've got to have something to continue on with. Otherwise, you kind of fade away.
Yep.
So those are very important. And especially, I think, if you have a legacy where you've got your name on the door,
Right.
That makes it a little more challenging.
Yeah,
maybe you put
absolutely.
Ann Sons or Ann Daughter or Foundation or something like that, but you still got your name on the door.
I don't care how big your business is. You go to the opening day of Little League and you watch some little 6 or 7-year-old walking down Main Street with your company name on the back of his shirt.
Sure.
Gives you goosebumps.
Yeah.
It still does.
Yeah. And it's recognition
nice.
by the rest of the community
Sure.
that, hey, these guys sponsored a team.
Yep.
I don't know what that cost you, but it just sponsored a team. So we talked a little bit about the quadrant for existing business owners, I think.
Yes.
We talked about that. And we talked about some of the internal versus external transition, where if you're going to pick a non-family member, if it's a family business, or going to the outside. We talked a little about your collaboration. So what are some of the checkpoints you use when you go through and really work with the business owner and be sure that you've got a viable transition plan?
Well, the cash flow is key.
Okay.
And again, getting back to what's the cash flow showing? What is the cash flow really? And because if this is going to be an external sale, for instance, and the acquirer has to go to the bank and go for a 504 SBA loan, well, nobody wants to hear that there's a certain amount of business doesn't find its way in the books. So you have to show what's there. And that's so critical, is that you have to make the business has to be profitable, the business has to be sustainable, and the business has to be transferable. And all those things don't happen overnight. Sometimes we work with the business owner to increase the profitability. Take a look at what's your pricing. Some people haven't changed their pricing in years because they haven't had to.
Yep.
By being sustainable, is what you're doing going to be going on? Are you in the dining industry?
One of the things that we ask on the survey is, if you go away on vacation for 2 weeks, can you do that without making phone calls or checking your email or dealing with everything on a daily basis? Or do you have someone that can run it soup to nuts while you're gone? That's sustainability.
Right, and to a certain extent, transferability, because it can run without you.
Right.
And that's and we see it in some of the groups that you and I belong to, John, is that 1 or 2 person businesses, all this stuff sounds wonderful, but how do I get from a 2-man operation to a 10-man operation to a 20-man operation?
Right. Well, the idea of the growth in terms of how you're going to leverage that going forward. And then also what your role is going to be going forward.
Sure.
I was talking to a couple who have a music studio, and one of the things that they were talking about doing was expanding. They wanted to go from 4 to 7 or some number like that sites. And the co-owner, the wife, said, well, I can't do the things I wanted to do, I'm doing right now? Mm-hmm. Well, and it's a step back, right? And
Sure.
you got to look at what your role is and how you're going to back up and let somebody else take that role.
Now you're going to manage the studio and not manage the soundboard.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is the fun stuff.
Yeah, that's right. I think that was where it was. What are some of the pitfalls that you encounter?
Well, some of the pitfalls it starts with the owners and their unrealistic values, of the business. It's they think the business is worth so much more than it really is. And part of his education process, we're saying, look, here's the cash flow of the business, here's the multiple, and actually, if you don't believe the multiple we're coming up with, here's 6 rules of thumb that are coming within 10 or 15% of what the formula is showing us. So this is what the business really is. Getting back to the personal expenses run through the business, if you know you're going to sell within 2-3 years, well, you know what, pump the brakes. Pump the brakes on the country club, pump the brakes on the boat, pump the brakes on the client trip to Florida. It's an amazing how many things get run through the business. I get a call from my 35-year-old daughter. From her cell phone, it comes up as Steve Vesey. I says, Courtney, are you still on my plan? Well, yeah, I am.
Oh, on your cell plan.
So the telecommunications for the entire family. So there's so many things that get blown through the business. So pull back on that. Build up that bottom line. Because regardless of what business you're in, it's a 4 to 5 time multiple, and for every $100,000 that you put to the bottom line, you're increasing the value of the business by $400,000 to $500,000.
Yeah.
That's what we try to work with the people and show them how to do
So So if you took to that point where you're talking to somebody and trying to get them set up for the exit process or the transition process, and they're trying to figure out retirement, they haven't put much away, what do you do?
Well, sometimes that's that wait and grow. What we do is we have an analysis, we call it a gap analysis, where we know this is what you have, this is what your savings are, this is what your retirement is, this is what your Social Security is. And Social Security is a big piece of this. It's as you talk to people in their 60s or maybe 70 when they're cashing in their Social Security, they're stunned at how much it is. But you've had to pay into it as well. But what we have to identify is two things. Is coming up with what's your burn rate. How much money do you spend a year? And that's the problem with the small business owner is that, I take $125,000 a year salary, I take $150,000 out. Great. 3 cars, boat, country club membership, directors meetings 3 nights a week for meals. All these things add up, and the average business owner has another $60,000, $70,000, $100,000 of perks that he has to now pay for once he doesn't own the business. So you have to factor that into it. All of a sudden now, I can get by on 100. No, you can't. You need 150.
Not the way we really pare it down, and then we say, here's where you want to be. With say, want to move to Florida, you got this, that, and the other thing. It's going to cost this much to live per year, and how long are you going to live? What is that? How does that? You do the time value of money, and you bring it back to real time, and then you say, here's the business. Can this get you from here to there? And if it can't, can we grow it, or can we do something within that time frame
to close that gap?
So do you also work with financial planners to help them with that process as well?
They're key. Most business owners will have somebody they've relied on over the years, and we work very closely with them. I'm taking a run up to New Hampshire on Thursday with one. He's put together what he thinks they can get out of the retirement dollars they have now. We have a value of the business. Now we need to really talk about their lifestyle. Here's what we have. Here's what you're going to have on an ongoing basis. Is this going to work?
And the son's involved too, so the son needs to say, hey, can I make this a viable business going forward, because I'm going to be the one running it.
Because he's got to contribute to his father's parents' welfare going forward.
And in any business, the trough is only so big. And you can't have too many heads in it.
That's right. Well, we're about to run out of time here, but I want to just try to get a sense as to what would the key thing you say to a business owner that's in their 60s is looking at trying to, wind down their working career and get into retirement?
They need to take a hard look at their role in their business. And as Eric alluded to, are you your business? Do you work in your business or on your business? You have to have it. If this is going to work, you have to have a situation where you can step away, back away, and the business keeps on going on.
Okay.
Is that fair enough?
Bottom line,
That makes a lot of sense. Well, that's been great. I think there's been good information we can pass on to our viewers as we look out there, and if they're in a business that is in the categories that you talked about, probably ought to talk to somebody about it. Think about what you want to do.
Because most people have not saved enough for their retirement. And the business asset, the liquidation, the liquidity event coming out of business is key to their success.
And the tax implications are insane.
So we're going to flash up on the screen here a way to get a hold of you if someone wants to do that.
That's great.
That'll go on and get a hold of you at Legacy Strategies. I'm sorry, businesslegacystrategies.com.
That's okay.
And do that. But I want to thank you for the time.
Well, thank you for having us, John.
And having us on The Voice of Business. So with that, we're going to wrap up today's session. And this is John King reminding you to keep it local. Now, Keep It Local is a program that we started at the Greater Beverly Chamber of Commerce about a year ago, where we encourage people to buy local business from their area. If you have any topics that you'd like us to explore, please send a request to John Solms at the Greater Beverly Chamber of Commerce. On behalf of the Greater Beverly Chamber of Commerce, thank you for listening.